The Urban Tribe movement is really about meeting like-minded people, using technology to promote inclusivity and diversity. We're interested in the evolution of technology, its impact on society, and meeting people using VR for good in Los Angeles. I'm looking forward to meet the VRScout team, one of the world's leading immersive media companies.
I guess if you asked us a year ago, VR tended to be more of an isolated experience. But what we've seen over the past year is how this platform and this technology now is being used for social purposes.
Now what we're entering is the beginning of the spatial computing, of the immersive computing, of 3D computing, just as the next era of how humans communicate, collaborate, educate, and do anything. So when you're like, what can VR be used for? An equivalent question would be, what are you going to use the internet for? The more perspectives that we're able to see of people that are unlike ourselves, the better it is for humanity, and that fosters understanding, that fosters compassion.
This is Kate with the Urban Tribe movement, and we're here in LA at the VRScout with Malia and Jonathan.
Hello, hello.
So what is VRScout?
VRScout is an immersive media company. We're based here in Los Angeles, focus on media publishing, covering the VR, AR industry. We also have a content studio, and we do lots of really fun events.
What is your mission statement at VRScout?
I would say it's about highlighting the creators who are building amazing things in VR. And it's kind of that intersection between technology, immersive technology, and people's passion points, whether it's education, art, music, and that kind of convergence of those 2 points.
This technology, this medium, will eventually affect every single industry. And so it's really about connecting with people around the things that they're already caring about.
And I mean, our approach is really, we are already so passionate about VR, and we think it's the future, and it's one of the most exciting technologies to come about in years and decades. And I think it's one of those things that we want to make sure and share this excitement with others, and the best way to do that is really find out what are they passionate about, what are they excited about, and showing them how VR can be applied to that.
In what ways are people using virtual reality to create a positive impact on society?
There's a lot of ways. The most exciting things we've seen are coming out of the education and the medical space. A simple thing as being able to have a cardboard headset where you slot your phone in and be able to transport students to completely different worlds. In a way, it's like a magic school bus. It teleports these kids on field trips that they would never be able to go, especially if they're coming from underprivileged areas where they can't even afford a field trip just to the local museum.
Favorite applications of this immersive technology is the therapeutic space and how this medium is being deployed to actually help people. So this was actually research that was done back in the 90s up at the University of Washington. And they did this control group with burn victims. And it turns out that burn victims, during their recovery, the most painful part of the recovery process is when their wounds have to be cleansed. And so what they did as part of this study to see how VR could be used as a pain distraction technique, they put these people in a very rudimentary virtual world called Snow World. And you're like throwing snowballs that are kind of in this immersive environment, right? And by using this transportive ability of this technology to distract people from their current real state of pain, those studies showed, and again, these are in the 90s, those studies showed that VR has the exact same efficacy on pain reduction as morphine.
Do you think some people would use VR technology to escape pain and avoid reality altogether?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, well, like anything, you know, everything is it's VR, AR, all immersive technologies. These are just tools. And just like a knife can be used to cut a piece of bread or put butter on a piece of toast, it can also be used to stab someone. So this is an incredibly powerful tool, an incredibly powerful medium, and it has to be done in a conscientious way because it is so powerful. So will people use it for escapism? Of course they will. Humans always use every technology as escape routes, right? However, there are so many positive ways that this tool is used, and we hope that that's really what's going to come out of this, and that's how we can come together as a human race and just expand our consciousness and evolve more as humanity.
How would you say VR is promoting a social connection amongst people?
I mean, the most amazing thing, because before, I guess if you asked us a year ago, VR tended to be more of an isolated experience. People would put on the headset and they're kind of closed off from their environment around them and just really immersed in this new virtual environment and not really aware of any social aspect or other people that might be in the room or around the world. But what we've seen over the past year is how this platform and this technology now is being used for social purposes. A simple thing could just be a chat room, like this conversation we're having right now can be done in virtual reality. And it's no different than reality, except you would be an amazing avatar, of course, and Malia would be there standing there. And as we're talking, our mouths are moving.
Like, you seem like really enthusiastic.
Yeah.
I want an amazing avatar.
You'll get an amazing avatar too, and I'll be this, kind of like bobbly avatar, and we'll be talking to each other, and we don't have to be in the same room. We can be, it's just already like what we see with web chat and video chat, except now we actually feel like we're connected. We actually feel the presence of each other, and all those kind of nuances to like social interaction where like I feel like I have to make eye contact with you when I'm talking. Those all start to come out in virtual reality because it is so real.
So this is actually mind-blowing because I thought that virtual reality was a game or an activity that you play, but I had no idea that it was interactive among people playing or using the technology at the same time.
Totally. Yeah. So a way to kind of think about VR, AR, MR, immersive technologies in general, and we'll just say VR for brevity's sake, and kind of use it as an umbrella term. This is fundamentally a shift in how we compute. So this is fundamentally just a shift into immersive computing. So when you're looking at the history of computing, think of how huge the first computers were, right? They were like bigger than this room. And then we had the PC revolution in the 80s, and they got smaller. People had them more in their homes. Laptops came out, got more popular in the 90s. And now all of us are walking around with computers in our pocket. So we're now nearing the end of the mobile computing revolution. And when you actually look at a cell phone and you go through line item by line item by line item of every single functionality that's in a cell phone, whether it's email, whether it's the actual call function, which no one even uses anymore. Whether that's your gyroscope, whether that's the map functionality, whether it's the camera. When you total up all of those line items for all of those functionalities that are packed into this computer that fits in your pocket, those line items total up to $1 million worth of 1980s technology. So as we're nearing the end of this mobile computing revolution, these are only getting this much better, this much smaller, this much faster every single time a new phone comes out, right? So we're kind of nearing the end of those incremental improvements. And now what we're entering is the beginning of the spatial computing, of the immersive computing, of 3D computing, just as the next era of how humans communicate, collaborate, educate, and do anything. So when you're like, what can VR be used for? An equivalent question would be, what are you going to use the internet for?
And getting to that kind of mobile computing, that phone right there now is why we have VR kind of back in front and center of everything. That phone, that screen, those sensors, that's what's powering a lot of this technology, where you're almost wearing a phone on your face. It just happens to be in a housing. So that's kind of the natural evolution to that. And now when we have a medium, or we can create immersive worlds where anything is possible and everything is infinite, is that the last medium? Can anything going forward from here on out, can it just be built in virtual reality and that's it?
So one thing that's really interesting is virtual conferences and the ability to kind of piggyback on what Jonathan was saying, like you could be back up in Montreal and we could be here in Los Angeles in real life, but then we could meet in the same virtual space being represented by avatars of our choosing that perhaps represent our personalities or who we maybe feel more like, maybe I wanted to be a 10-foot tall wolf one day. Then, that's the avatar I can pick, right? So if we can get together in these virtual spaces, no matter where we are around the world, that gives people such a better window into business and the people that you're doing a deal with than just doing a Skype call or just doing a phone call or just doing FaceTime, because you actually get the sense that you're there in real life in the same space. Mm-hmm. So not only does that help forge and nurture and maintain business relationships, but that also cuts down on travel expense, that also cuts down on carbon emissions. And so it's actually far better for our planet in general to be having virtual meetings with perhaps our associates across the globe than getting on a plane and wasting a bunch of gas and actually going there in real life.
What challenges does virtual reality face, and how could this technology be used in our day-to-day routine?
Well, the social meeting thing is really huge for me. It really is. Being able to meet with people in the same space is really important. And I do like to be able to look people in the eye, or at least be able to tune into their body language in some sense. It does have to do with my daily life is when we can bring together sports, like real sports, and esports and virtual reality. So I'm not a gamer.
There's a link?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
So I'm not a gamer. I genuinely don't care about video games at all. Like I don't understand video games, and billions of people around the world love video games, and esports is a huge industry. It's just not something that resonates with me. However, if I can get inside the video game and run around and be Lara Croft and be jumping and running around and actually doing a workout, sign me up. So when we're talking about like physical limitations and also talking about social experiences, a friend of mine shared this story with me. She held this event, and it was this feminism, art, sort of political event that she held in virtual reality a few months ago. And one of the women that attended this event virtually is based out of New York, and she's a quadriplegic. She would never have been able to leave her apartment, get on a plane, and go visit that event in real life. But she was able to access it through virtual reality, and she was able to talk with and bond with so many people that she wouldn't have had access to before. So technology is expensive at this point, and so it is a little bit prohibitive to adoption and access right now. There's a lot of really amazing ways that this access does open up doors for people and does open up entirely new worlds to people.
And it could be said that this virtual reality is our teleportation, at least for our generation. Like, I don't think we'll ever see anything closer to teleportation than VR. It wouldn't be safe for us to actually have like the sci-fi teleportation where we're, dismantling all your atoms and then trying to send it somewhere else. Or, if we wanted to be on top of Mount Everest, this expands all of that, and it's completely safe in that regards.
Mm-hmm. How else does virtual reality promote inclusivity?
I think we can speak to VRScout and kind of bring back the curtain a little bit on how we think of that. And, the two co-founders are both men, and then I'm a partner in the company as well. And being a strong female voice in this company, I'm really lucky to be working with the two best dudes ever, every single day, hundreds of hours every week. And so I joined a team that already was extremely focused on inclusion and equal representation. So when we have events such as our monthly Mixer series, as an example, we get together people in real life, in the community, together in real life. I have to stress that these are not virtual events, actually together in the same space at the same time around particular topics. We always make sure that the panel discussion has equal gender representation. We just did a monthly Mixer on impact, which focused on different creators and different companies that are doing amazing work around the world to progress human evolution and social justice and human rights. So on that panel, we had the head of Human Rights Watch, the director of Mashable's programming, and had a really fascinating conversation from a ton of different perspectives. So speaking purely from VRScout, this is something that's baked into our DNA and something that we always have in mind, whether it's people that are attending the events, the writers that we work with, the people that we work with, and then also how we assemble those panels and who gets to have a voice at that table. We're always making sure that everyone is included and that not the same five white dudes get to talk all the time. Yeah. No, that's nice. What would you say, Jonathan?
I think as we've been talking about teleportation, the one thing that is talked about a lot as well is kind of the empathy side of things, and that is the ability where I can teleport somewhere else and enjoy in VR, but then there's also the idea of I can be somebody else. I can be a person, like an actual first-person perspective, and actually see through their eyes and walk through their shoes, and that is a very powerful tool. I don't know how many times I've seen pieces that bring a lot of people to tears, maybe bring me to a kind of tears, and I'm getting a little bit choked up. Whether it's simply just being able to see the life of an animal that might go through like a slaughterhouse, or being able to see what it's like for a woman to get kind of help at it, like a medical treatment or something like that. Like those are all powerful pieces, and like for example, like being able to see what it's like to live in the shoes of a Syrian refugee in a refugee camp. Very powerful pieces, and that's what I think gets a lot of people excited as well. Besides this kind of escapism, if I'm teleporting to actually feel that.
Something that I think you guys are really focused on is things that bring people together and things that connect people, right? So the more perspectives that we're able to experience that are not our own, if I can put myself in the shoes of, a single mother in the deep South and really realize what her day-to-day is like, or to Jonathan's point, put myself in a Syrian refugee camp, or, in somewhere somewhere where I've never been, or someone that I'm really not in real life. The more perspectives that we're able to see of people that are unlike ourselves, the better it is for humanity, and that fosters understanding, that fosters compassion, and then there are a lot of people that are then working on funneling that empathy and that compassion into actual, tangible, real-world action.